The gun barrel pressed against Leo's temple was still warm from the last man Viper had killed. "You're the little rat who's been watching my streets." The Copperhead's president sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey and cigarettes. "Pathetic. You know what happens to stray dogs in my territory?" Leo couldn't answer. Not because of fear, though his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, but because he hadn't spoken in 3 years. The words had died in his throat the day his foster father's fist had crushed something inside him that never healed. "Boss, Axel Graves just pulled up to the ice cream shop," a voice crackled over Viper's radio. "The kid's with him." Viper's smile turned predatory. "Perfect. Let's send the Grim Reaper's president a message he'll never forget." He shoved Leo to the ground. "You want to survive, boy? Stay down and watch how real men handle business." But as Viper's men loaded their weapons and positioned themselves across from Sal's ice cream parlor, Leo saw something that made his blood run cold. An 8-year-old boy with chocolate ice cream on his face, laughing as his father wiped his chin with a napkin so gently it made Leo's chest ache. The same boy who would be dead in 30 seconds. Leo had learned to make himself invisible. It was a survival skill, honed over 3 years of sleeping in doorways, scavenging from dumpsters, and avoiding the cops who'd just send him back into the system. At 16, he was a ghost haunting the edges of Denver's warehouse district, too small to threaten, too quiet to notice, too broken to matter. But every Tuesday and Friday, at 4:30 p.m., Leo allowed himself one weakness. He'd position himself near the dumpster behind Sal's ice cream parlor, close enough to watch through the window, but far enough to remain unseen. And he'd observe something he'd never had. Something that hurt worse than an empty stomach or frozen fingers. A father who loved his son. Axel Graves didn't look like the kind of man who'd tenderly wipe ice cream from a child's face. 6'4" of scarred muscle and rage, with arms sleeved in skull tattoos, and a leather vest that proclaimed him president of the Grim Reaper's MC. He looked like he ate nails for breakfast and washed them down with motor oil. But when 8-year-old Toby Graves laughed, that pure, unbridled sound of childhood joy, Axel's weathered face would soften in a way that made Leo's throat tight. "Dad, can I get the Superman one?" Toby's voice carried through the cracked window. "You got the Superman one last time, kiddo. How about trying something new?" "But Superman's my favorite." Axel chuckled, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. All right. Superman it is. But you're brushing your teeth twice tonight." Leo watched as Axel pulled out a worn leather wallet, counting out bills with hands that had undoubtedly broken bones and ended lives. Those same hands ruffled Toby's hair with infinite gentleness. The boy Leo had been, before the system, before the abuse, before the silence, might have felt jealous. But that boy was dead. This Leo only felt a hollow ache, like pressing on a bruise that never quite healed. He'd seen Toby and Axel here 17 times now. He'd memorized the way Toby always ordered with his hands flying. The way Axel always let him get extra sprinkles. The way they'd sit in the corner booth, while Toby chattered about school, and Axel listened like nothing else in the world mattered. It was the most beautiful thing Leo had ever witnessed. Which is why, when he noticed the black sedan parked across the street with its window cracked just enough to reveal the barrel of a rifle, his heart stopped. Leo had lived on these streets long enough to recognize a hit when he saw one. The car had been there too long. The engine was running. The tinted windows hid faces, but not intentions. And the gun was pointed directly at the ice cream shop's entrance. His eyes darted to the window where Axel was standing, wallet in hand, completely unaware. Toby was tugging on his father's jacket, pointing at the display case. Leo's fingers dug into the rough brick wall behind him. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to disappear like he always did. But Toby was laughing. That sound, pure and bright and untouched by the darkness that had swallowed Leo whole. It was the only good thing in his world. The only proof that somewhere, somehow, a child could still be safe and loved and happy. If that gun fired, that laugh would die forever. Leo's hands were shaking. His pulse thundered in his ears. He was just a homeless kid with no voice, no strength, no right to be a hero. But he was the only one who'd seen. Time crystallized into fractured moments. Axel pushed open the ice cream shop door, Toby's hand clasped in his. The boy was animated, gesturing wildly about something. Probably the merits of Superman versus Batman, a debate they had every week. The sedan's window lowered another inch. Leo's legs moved before his brain could catalog all the reasons this was insane. He'd spent 3 years learning to be invisible, learning to survive by never being noticed. Now he sprinted into the open, his ratty sneakers slapping against cracked pavement, his skeletal frame cutting through the afternoon shadows. The world slowed to a nightmarish crawl. He could see the gunman's finger tightening on the trigger, could see Axel's hand reaching back to close the shop door behind him, could see Toby's face tilted up toward his father, completely oblivious. Leo couldn't shout. His voice had been stolen years ago by fists and fear. He couldn't warn them. He could only run. Faster. The gunman's eyes shifted, caught the movement of a sprinting homeless kid. Confusion flickered across his face for a fraction of a second. Was this part of the plan? A distraction? That fraction of a second was all Leo had. He launched himself at Toby like a missile, his arms outstretched, his entire being focused on one singular purpose. Get between the gun and the boy. Time snapped back into brutal reality. The crack of the rifle split the air. Leo felt the impact before he heard it, a white-hot lance of agony that punched through his back and exploded out his chest. The force of it carried him forward, slamming him into Toby and driving both of them to the ground. Warm wetness spread across Leo's shirt. His vision blurred. Somewhere distant, he heard Toby screaming, felt small hands pushing at him, trying to get out from under his weight. Dad! Dad! Axel's roar shook the street. The sound of a father's terror and rage compressed into a single word. Leo felt himself being rolled over, felt rough hands gripping his shoulders, but the sensations were fading, bleeding out along with the red pool spreading beneath him. Through dimming eyes, he saw Axel's face above him. Shock transforming into understanding, transforming into fury. The MC president's hand came up with a pistol, returned fire at the sedan. Glass shattered. Tires squealed. The black car fishtailed around a corner and disappeared. But Axel wasn't watching the car. He was staring down at Leo with an expression that might have been wonder if it wasn't drowned in horror. You, Axel's voice cracked. You jumped in front of. Is he dead? Toby's tear-stained face appeared in Leo's fading vision. Dad, is he dead? He saved me. He saved me. No. Axel's arms scooped Leo up with surprising gentleness, cradling his broken body. No, you don't get to die. You hear me, kid? You don't get to die. Leo's lips moved soundlessly. If he could have spoken, he might have said, it's okay. At least Toby's still laughing. But the darkness was already pulling him under. The last thing he heard was Axel shouting into a phone. Code Black. I need every brother in the state at St. Catherine's Hospital now. Axel's motorcycle, a custom Harley-Davidson that he'd built with his own hands, could hit 140 miles per hour on an open highway. Today it broke every speed limit in Denver, weaving through traffic with Leo's limp body pressed against Axel's chest. Behind them, Toby clung to his father's back, his small hands fisted in Axel's leather vest, his face buried against his father's shoulders. But one hand had worked its way down to grip Leo's cold fingers. Hold on, Toby whispered, over and over. Please hold on. Every bump sent fresh blood seeping through the makeshift bandage Axel had torn from his own shirt. Leo's face was the color of old newspaper, his breathing shallow and irregular. Axel had been in the life for 20 years. He'd seen men die in every imaginable way, bullets, blades, beatings. He'd held brothers as they bled out, had closed the eyes of friends who wouldn't make it home. But this was different. This was a kid, some homeless teenager he'd seen lurking around but never bothered to notice, who'd taken a bullet meant for Toby, who'd sacrificed himself without hesitation, without thought for reward or recognition. The guilt threatened to choke him. Don't you dare die, Axel growled, taking a corner so sharp his knee nearly scraped asphalt. You saved my boy. You understand me? You saved my boy, which means you're mine now. You're my responsibility. And I don't let what's mine die. Leo's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, his gaze focused on Axel's face. There was no fear there, only a kind of peaceful resignation that made Axel's chest constrict. Stay with me. Axel's voice rose to a roar. Stay with me. St. Catherine's Hospital appeared ahead, its emergency bay glowing like a beacon. Axel didn't bother with parking. He drove straight through the ambulance entrance, his motorcycle's engine roaring through the sterile corridors until he skidded to a stop in front of the triage desk. A security guard started forward. Sir, you can't. Axel's hand moved to the gun at his hip. This kid is dying. Get me a doctor. Now. The receptionist's eyes widened, taking in the blood-soaked president of the most feared MC in Colorado, the crying child on his back, and the teenager bleeding out in his arms. Code Blue. Code Blue, she screamed into the intercom. Within seconds, a trauma team materialized. A doctor, young, female, terrified, reached for Leo. Axel laid him gently on the gurney, his hands leaving bloody prints on the white sheets. You save him, he told the doctor, his voice dropping to something cold and lethal. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs. You save this kid, or I burn this hospital to the ground. The doctor swallowed hard, but nodded. We'll do everything we can. Everything isn't enough. I want miracles. They wheeled Leo toward the operating room, leaving a trail of crimson drops on the linoleum. Axel stood frozen, watching until the doors swung shut and cut off his view. Toby had climbed down from his back and now wrapped his arms around Axel's waist, sobbing into his father's bloody vest. He saved me, Dad. The quiet boy. He didn't even know me, but he saved me. Axel pulled his son close, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. I know, kiddo. I know. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out with shaking hands, Leo's blood still wet on his fingers, and saw the screen filled with incoming messages. On our way. 20 minutes out. Coming in from Boulder. ETA 30. Alerted the western chapters. They're rolling. Axel had sent out a code black, the highest alert in the Grim Reaper's hierarchy, reserved for attacks on the club's family. Within hours, every brother within a 3-state radius would descend on this hospital. He dialed his VP, a man named Tank who'd been riding with Axel since they were teenagers. Talk to me. Tank's voice was already tight with tension. Someone tried to kill Toby. A homeless kid took the bullet. Axel's voice was eerily calm. I need you to do 2 things. First, I want this hospital locked down. Nobody in or out without my say-so. Second, he paused, looking down at his son's tear-streaked face. Second, I want you to find out who gave the order. And Tank, when you find them, don't kill them. Not yet. I want that pleasure myself. Dr. Sarah Martinez had been working in St. Catherine's trauma unit for 7 years. She'd treated gunshot wounds, stabbings, car accidents. She'd performed surgery while gang members threatened her in the hallway. But she'd never operated while a biker gang president held a gun to her supervisor's head. He's crashing, a nurse called out. BP dropping, 80/40. Sarah's hands moved with practiced precision, clamping bleeders, removing bullet fragments. The slug had entered through the boy's back, missed his spine by millimeters, nicked a lung, and fragmented against a rib. I need more blood. O negative, for units. Doctor, we're running low. I don't care if you have to drain every donor in Denver. This kid doesn't die on my table. Outside the OR, Axel paced like a caged wolf. Hospital security had tried to make him leave. One look at his face had changed their minds. Toby sat on a plastic chair, still wearing his ice cream-stained shirt, his small body trembling. Brothers were already arriving. First the local chapter, then members from surrounding areas. By the time Leo had been in surgery for an hour, the hospital lobby looked like a motorcycle rally. Leather-clad men filled every available space. Some sat on the floor. Others leaned against walls, arms crossed, faces grim. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was a message written in chrome and leather. One of ours is in there. And if he dies, this city burns. Tank arrived at the 90-minute mark, his massive frame cutting through the crowd. He found Axel standing outside the doors, fists clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Boss. Axel didn't turn. Status. We've got 60 brothers here now. Another 40 inbound. I've posted guards at every entrance. Nobody's getting near this kid without going through us first. Tank paused. Cops showed up. There, not interfering. Smart. The Denver PD knew better than to poke this particular hornet's nest. And the shooters? Tank's expression darkened. Got a line on the car. Black sedan, registered to a shell company. But I talked to some of our friends on the street. Word is Viper greenlit the hit. Viper, president of the Copperheads MC, the Grim Reaper's rivals for territory and drug routes. They'd been escalating for months. Small skirmishes, stolen shipments, burned clubhouses. But shooting at a child? That broke every code, every rule of the street. How sure are you? 90%. Got two independent sources. Axel's jaw clenched. Find me the other 10%. I want to be 100% sure before I end him. The doors burst open. Dr. Martinez emerged, her scrubs soaked in blood, her face exhausted but victorious. He's alive. The collective exhale from 60 bikers was like a wind gust. Axel grabbed her shoulders, not roughly, but firmly enough that she couldn't pull away. And the bullet missed all major organs, but he lost a lot of blood. We had to remove fragments from his lung, and there's significant soft tissue damage. He's in critical condition, but stable. Can I see him? He's being moved to ICU. He won't wake up for at least 24 hours, and when he does, she hesitated. Mr. Graves, do you know anything about this boy? No. Well, I ran his fingerprints through the system. His name is Leo Foster. He's 16 years old, a runaway from the foster system. He's severely malnourished, showing signs of historical abuse, and she met Axel's eyes. And he hasn't spoken in 3 years. Selective mutism, likely trauma-induced. Axel felt something crack open in his chest. This kid, this broken, silent, starving kid, had thrown himself in front of a bullet for a stranger's child. Had sacrificed himself without even being able to scream. Which room? Axel's voice was rough. ICU, room 7. But Mr. Graves, he needs rest. Axel was already moving. By midnight, St. Catherine's Hospital had become a fortress. 123 Grim Reapers from across Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico had converged on the building. They lined the hallways, the lobby, the parking lot. Their motorcycles filled every available space, chrome gleaming under streetlights like a metal army. Inside, nurses navigated through walls of leather and denim, stepping carefully around men who looked like they'd been carved from granite. The bikers were respectful, moving aside when asked, keeping their voices low, but their presence was overwhelming. Room 7 in the ICU had become a shrine. Axel had dragged a chair to Leo's bedside and hadn't moved in 6 hours. Toby was curled up on his lap, finally asleep after crying himself into exhaustion. Leo looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, dwarfed by machines and tubes. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, the ventilator breathing for him. Bandages wrapped his torso, already spotted with seepage. But he was alive. Tank appeared in the doorway. Boss, the VP from the Boulder chapter is asking if they should head back. We've got this place locked down tight. No. Axel didn't look up from Leo's face. I want everyone to stay until he wakes up. I want him to see that he's not alone anymore. Copy that. Tank hesitated. Axel, who is this kid to you? The question hung in the air. Axel's thumb traced gentle circles on Toby's back, while his other hand rested near Leo's, careful not to disturb the foreline. He's the kid who loved my son enough to die for him. Axel's voice cracked. He's the kid who saw evil coming and didn't run. He's the bravest person I've ever met, and he's been living in fucking dumpsters while I drove past him every week without seeing him. You couldn't have known. I should have. I built this club on brotherhood, on protecting our own. And there was a kid, a child, starving on our streets while we threw away scraps. Axel's eyes finally lifted, meeting Tank's. That changes now. Leo saved Toby, but he's going to save me too. He's going to make me remember what we're supposed to stand for. Outside the room, 2 prospects stood guard. Down the hall, more brothers kept watch. On every floor, at every entrance, leather-clad sentinels maintained their vigil. A nurse approached Axel around 3 a.m. Mr. Graves, I know you want to stay, but the boy needs rest, and so do you. I'm not leaving. But I'm not leaving. His eyes held hers. This kid took a bullet for my son. The least I can do is be here when he wakes up scared and alone. Which, from his file, is something he's felt every day of his life. The nurse wisely retreated. As dawn broke over Denver, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Axel finally allowed himself to close his eyes. But his hand remained near Leo's, a silent promise. You're not invisible anymore. You're not alone. And anyone who wants to hurt you is going to have to go through 123 very pissed-off bikers first. 48 hours later, Leo still hadn't woken. The doctors assured Axel this was normal. His body was healing, fighting infection, recovering from massive trauma. But every hour that passed with Leo's eyes closed felt like a countdown to something terrible. Axel had left the hospital exactly 3 times. twice to shower and change clothes, once to attend church, the mandatory meeting of all Grim Reaper's officers. That meeting had been brief. "We're at war," Axel had announced, his voice cold as winter. "The Copperheads tried to murder my 8-year-old son. They shot a child who had nothing to do with our beef. They broke every code, every rule we live by." Around the table, hardened men who'd seen and done terrible things nodded grimly. "I want options," Axel continued. "Legal and otherwise." His enforcer, a scarred man named Reaper, spoke first. "Cops won't touch this. The kid who took the bullet has no witnesses saying it was meant for Toby. Officially, it looks like a random shooting. Viper's already got his alibis lined up. So we handle it our way." "Axel," Tank's voice was cautious. "If we go to war with the Copperheads, people will die. Our people. You sure you want to risk? That kid is lying in a hospital bed because he was braver than all of us combined." Axel's fist slammed on the table. He didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate the odds. He just ran into fire to save my son. "And you're asking if I'm willing to risk something for him?" "Silence. Here's what's going to happen," Axel said. "We're going to find every Copperhead who had anything to do with this hit. We're going to make them disappear. And we're going to send Viper a message he'll never forget. You don't touch children. Not ours, not anyone's." The vote was unanimous. Back at the hospital, Axel resumed his vigil. Toby had gone home reluctantly, promising to return after school. The boy had filled Leo's room with comic books, action figures, drawings, anything he thought the quiet boy might like. When he woke up, Axel found himself talking to Leo's unconscious form. "I've been doing some thinking," he said, his rough voice soft in the sterile room. "About what kind of man lets a kid live on the streets while he drives by in a $30,000 motorcycle. About what kind of father is so focused on his own kid that he doesn't see other children suffering." He paused, watching Leo's chest rise and fall. "You know what my old man used to tell me? He said a man is measured by what he protects. Not by what he owns or what he's done, but by what he's willing to fight for." Axel's laugh was bitter. "I thought I was protecting my family, my club. But you? You protected a stranger. A kid you'd never even talked to." Leo's fingers twitched. Axel leaned forward. "That's right. I know you can't talk. Doctor told me. And that breaks my heart, kid, because I bet you've got a lot to say." He reached out, carefully taking Leo's hand. "But here's the thing. You don't need words to be heard. Not anymore. When you wake up, you're going to have a family. Real family. The kind that would burn the world down for you." Outside the window, the sun was setting, casting orange light across Leo's pale face. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. "Come on, Ghost," Axel whispered, using the name that had started circulating among the brothers, for the way Leo had lived unseen, for how close he'd come to dying. "Come back. You got unfinished business here." The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A street kid named Marcus, one of the homeless teens who'd known Leo from the shelters, approached the hospital cautiously. The wall of bikers nearly turned him away until he mentioned Leo's name. Within minutes, he was sitting across from Axel in a hospital conference room. "I heard what happened," Marcus said, fidgeting with the hem of his dirty jacket. "Heard Leo got shot saving some kid." "My kid?" "Yeah, well, Leo was good people. Quiet, but good." Marcus swallowed hard. "I might know something about who did it." Axel's full attention focused on the boy like a laser. "Talk." "Couple days before the shooting, I saw Leo hanging around Sal's ice cream place. There were these guys watching him, Copperheads by their colors. One of them got rough with Leo, pushed him around, asked if he was spying for you. And Leo couldn't answer them, obviously, but he pointed at the ice cream shop, like he was just watching. They laughed at him, called him a retard, told him to get lost." Marcus's hands clenched. "But the next day, I saw the same guys in that black sedan. They were casing the ice cream shop, taking pictures. Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Who was I going to tell? The cops? They don't care about us. And I didn't think." He trailed off. "I didn't think they'd actually shoot." Axel stood, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You did the right thing coming here. You need anything? Food, a place to stay?" Marcus blinked in surprise. "Ah, yeah, that'd be good." "Tank," Axel called. His VP appeared instantly. "Get Marcus set up with a room at the clubhouse. Make sure he's fed, clothed. He's under our protection now." After Marcus left, Axel pulled out his phone. "It's time." The hunt began at dusk. The Grim Reapers hit 3 Copperhead safe houses simultaneously. They weren't quiet about it. They wanted Viper to know they were coming. At the first location, a meth lab on the east side, Reaper and 6 brothers kicked in the door to find 4 Copperheads cutting product. The bikers went down hard, zip-tied and thrown in a van before they could grab weapons. At the second, a strip club the Copperheads used for money laundering, Tank walked in with a dozen brothers and systematically cleared the place. Dancers scattered. Bouncers wisely didn't interfere. The Copperhead VP, counting cash in the back office, found himself staring down the barrel of Tank's .45. Axel wants to talk to you about a kid, Tank said calmly. You can walk out on your feet, or we carry you out on a stretcher. Your choice. The VP chose feet. But the third location, a garage where the Copperheads stored stolen bikes. That's where things got bloody. 6 Copperheads were waiting, armed and ready. They'd been tipped off, knew the Reapers were coming. Gunfire erupted. Reaper took a bullet to the shoulder but kept moving, returning fire with mechanical precision. 2 Copperheads went down. A third tried to flee and ran straight into a brother named Chains, who clotheslined him so hard the man's feet left the ground. When the smoke cleared, 3 Copperheads were dead. 3 were wounded and captured. Reaper called Axel from the garage, his voice tight with pain. We got him, boss. But they were ready for us. Someone tipped them off. Yeah, which means we've got a leak. Axel considered this. Or Viper's panicking. Either way, bring everyone to the warehouse. It's time for some conversations. The warehouse was a Grim Reaper facility on the outskirts of Denver. Officially a motorcycle repair shop. Unofficially a place where the club handled business that couldn't see daylight. By midnight, 9 Copperheads were cable-tied to chairs, facing Axel Graves. He paced in front of them, his boots echoing in the cavernous space. Behind him, 50 Reapers watched in silence. Let me tell you about a kid named Leo, Axel began, his voice conversational. 16 years old. Homeless. Can't speak because someone beat him so bad it broke something inside. He should have been invisible. Should have been nobody. He stopped in front of the first Copperhead, a man in his 20s with teardrop tattoos. But Leo did something incredible. He saw a man with a gun pointed at a child, and he didn't freeze. He didn't run. He threw himself in front of that bullet without thinking twice. Axel leaned down until they were eye to eye. That bullet was meant for my son. For an 8-year-old boy eating ice cream with his dad. And you pieces of shit thought that was acceptable. We don't know what you're. The Copperhead started. Axel's fist crashed into his jaw, snapping his head back. Blood and a tooth spattered on the concrete. I'm not asking questions yet, Axel said calmly. I'm explaining. See, Leo's been in a coma for 2 days. He might not wake up. And if he doesn't, every single one of you is going to pray for death long before I grant it. He moved to the next Copperhead. But let's say Leo does wake up. Let's say he recovers. That still doesn't change what you did. You shot a child. You broke the most sacred rule we have. Axel's voice dropped to a whisper. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask each of you one question. Who gave the order? Silence. Nobody? Okay. Axel nodded to Reaper, who despite his wounded shoulder, brought out a toolbox. What happened next wasn't pretty. But by dawn, Axel had 3 confessions, all pointing to the same source. Viper had personally ordered the hit on Toby, considering it payback for a Reaper raid on a Copperhead drug shipment. As the sun rose, Axel's phone buzzed. Dr. Martinez, he's waking up. Axel was out the door before anyone could speak, leaving Reaper to clean up the mess. Leo's consciousness returned in fragments. First, the pain, a deep, burning ache in his chest that made breathing an exercise in agony. Then, sounds, the steady beep of monitors, the hiss of oxygen, low voices speaking in urgent tones. Finally, sensations, soft sheets beneath him, something warm gripping his hand, the antiseptic smell of hospital. His eyes opened. The ceiling was white, dotted with fluorescent lights that seemed too bright. He tried to move and immediately regretted it, as fire lanced through his torso. Easy, easy. A woman's face appeared above him. Dark hair pulled back, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You're in the hospital. You were shot, but you're going to be okay. Leo's mind struggled to catch up. Shot. Yes. He remembered the gun, the boy, the impact. Toby. Panic flooded through him. His hands moved weakly, trying to push up. Whoa, hold on. The doctor. He assumed she was a doctor. gently pressed him back down. The boy you saved is fine. Not a scratch on him. Because of you. The relief that washed over Leo was so intense it left him dizzy. I'm Dr. Martinez, the woman continued. You've been unconscious for 3 days. You're lucky to be alive. 3 days. Leo processed this. 3 days in a hospital meant astronomical bills. Bills he couldn't pay. They'd probably call the cops, send him back to foster care or worse. His eyes darted toward the door, calculating escape routes. Leo, Dr. Martinez's voice was firm. You're not going anywhere. And before you panic, you need to know something. She stepped aside, and Leo's world tilted. The hospital room wasn't empty. A little boy, Toby, he recognized Toby, was curled up in a chair, asleep with a comic book on his lap. And beside the bed, in another chair pulled so close their knees were touching, was the massive, terrifying figure of Axel Graves. The MC president looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw dark with stubble, his clothes rumpled. But when he saw Leo awake, his entire face transformed. Thank God, Axel breathed. Thank God. Leo's instinct was to shrink back, to make himself small. In his experience, powerful men who looked like Axel only meant pain. But Axel wasn't moving toward him. He was just sitting there, and were those tears on his face? I'm sorry, Axel said, his voice rough. I'm so damn sorry. I drove past you every week and didn't see you. Didn't help. You were invisible to me, and that's on me. Leo blinked in confusion. But you're not invisible anymore, kid. You saved my son. My Toby. You took a bullet meant for him. Axel's hand moved slowly, giving Leo time to pull away, before settling gently on his arm. That makes you family now. You understand? You're a Reaper. You're mine. And I protect what's mine. The weight of those words pressed down on Leo like a physical force. Family. His. Protected. Things he'd never had. Things he'd learned to stop wanting, because wanting hurt too much. Dad. Toby stirred, rubbing his eyes. Then he saw Leo, and his face lit up. He's awake. Dad, he's awake. Before Leo could react, Toby had scrambled onto the bed, careful of the tubes and wires, and wrapped his small arms around Leo's neck. You saved me. Toby whispered into Leo's ear. You're a hero. You're my hero. And Leo, who hadn't cried since the day he stopped speaking, felt tears slide down his cheeks. Viper was many things, a criminal, a drug dealer, a murderer, but he wasn't stupid. When 7 of his men disappeared in one night, when his safe houses got hit simultaneously, when the Grim Reapers effectively declared war, he knew it was time to run. He'd made a mistake. Shooting at a kid, even the kid of a rival MC president, was bad business. It brought heat, unwanted attention. The Reapers were well connected with law enforcement, not bought, exactly, but respected. They had history, legitimacy. The Copperheads were upstarts, aggressive and sloppy. And Viper had just given the Reapers moral high ground. So he packed a bag, grabbed his cash reserves, and headed for the Mexican border. He made it 30 miles outside Denver before the roadblock appeared. A dozen motorcycles spread across the highway, their riders sitting like statues. And in the center, on a custom Harley that gleamed like black ice, was Axel Graves. Viper slammed on his brakes, his car fishtailing. He threw it in reverse, but found more Reapers blocking the road behind him. Trapped, Axel climbed off his bike with deliberate slowness. The other Reapers followed, forming a wall of leather and steel. Viper sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, mind racing through options. He could try to shoot his way out. But he was one man with a pistol against 15 bikers with enough firepower to start a small war. He could try to bargain, offer money, territory, information. Or he could run and die tired. The choice was made for him when Reaper smashed the driver's side window with a baseball bat, reached in, and dragged Viper out by his collar. Viper hit the asphalt hard, stars exploding in his vision. Rough hands hauled him to his feet, held him upright. Axel stood 5 feet away, his face utterly calm. That terrified Viper more than rage would have. You tried to kill my son, Axel said. It was business. You hit our supply line. We had to retaliate. By shooting an 8-year-old? We didn't mean to. The kid got in the way. The kid? Axel's voice dropped to something sub-zero. His name is Leo. He's 16. He's been living on the streets for 3 years. He can't speak because someone beat him so badly it broke something inside. And when he saw your gun pointed at my boy, he didn't hesitate. He jumped in front of that bullet. Axel took a step forward. That kid had nothing. No family, no home, no voice. But he had more courage in his broken body than you've had in your entire worthless life. Look, we can make a deal. There is no deal. Axel's hand moved, and suddenly a pistol was pressed against Viper's forehead. You broke the code. You shot at a child. And worse, you made an innocent boy pay the price for your cowardice. Viper's bladder let go. He felt warmth spread down his leg, shame burning his face. Please, he whispered. Please, I'll do anything. I know you will. Axel lowered the gun. Which is why I'm not going to kill you. Not yet. Hope flickered in Viper's chest. See, Leo's awake now. Axel continued conversationally. He's going to survive. But he's got a long recovery ahead. Months of physical therapy, pain, trauma. And every day he suffers. I want you to suffer more. Axel nodded to Tank, who stepped forward with zip ties. You're going to disappear, Viper. Not dead. That would be mercy. You're going to live in a hole, waiting. And whenever I feel like Leo needs justice, I'll visit. Maybe I'll break one of your fingers. Maybe I'll take a toe. Maybe I'll just sit there and make you wonder when the pain's coming. You can't. I absolutely can. Axel's smile was glacial. The Copperheads are done. Finished. We've absorbed their territory, their income streams. Your club voted to disband rather than go to war with us. You're alone, Viper. And alone is where you're going to stay. They bound him, gagged him, threw him in the trunk of one of the Reaper's vans. As they drove away, Axel pulled out his phone and called the hospital. How is he? He asked Dr. Martinez. Stable. Asking for a pen and paper. I think he wants to write something. I'll be there in an hour. Axel climbed back on his bike, felt the familiar rumble of the engine. Around him, his brothers mounted up. The war was over. Justice was served. Now came the harder part. Keeping the promise he'd made. Giving Leo a home. When Leo woke for the second time, the pain was less sharp but more persistent. A constant ache that permeated everything. But that wasn't what captured his attention. His hospital room looked like a comic book store had exploded. Action figures lined the windowsill. Posters of superheroes covered the walls. A massive stack of comic books sat on the bedside table, topped with a note in crayon. For Leo. My dad says you can keep them forever. Toby. Leo's eyes moved slowly, cataloging impossibilities. A stuffed bear wearing a tiny leather vest sat in the chair. Get well cards covered every surface, most signed with names he didn't recognize. Tank, Reaper, Chains, Gunner. And through the window in the door, he could see two massive men standing guard, their backs to him, their presence as immovable as mountains. Fear crept up his spine. This had to be a dream or a mistake. People didn't do this for homeless kids. People didn't care. He tried to sit up, gasping as his chest protested. Immediately, the door opened and a nurse bustled in. Easy, honey. Don't move too fast. She adjusted his pillows, checked his monitors. You've got a lot of people worried about you. Leo wanted to ask what she meant, but the words wouldn't come. They never did. She seemed to understand. Can you write? He nodded. She handed him a small whiteboard and marker. Leo's hand shook as he wrote. Where am I? St. Catherine's Hospital. You've been here for 4 days. You were shot, but you're recovering beautifully. Why are there guards? The nurse's expression softened. Because Axel Graves declared you family, and the Grim Reapers protect their family. Before Leo could process this, the door burst open and Toby ran in, followed by a harried-looking teacher. I'm sorry, Mr. Graves said the boy could visit during lunch, but... It's fine, the nurse said, stepping back. Toby climbed carefully onto the bed, his small face serious. Hi, Leo. I'm Toby. I don't know if you remember me, but you saved my life. Leo nodded, unable to look away from those earnest 8-year-old eyes. Dad says you're going to live with us now. Is that okay? We have a big house, and I have lots of toys, and you can have your own room. And Toby took a breath. And I promise I'll share everything because you're a hero. Leo's hand trembled as he wrote on the whiteboard. I'm not a hero. Yes, you are. Toby's voice rose indignantly. You jumped in front of a bullet. That's what superheroes do. I was scared. Dad says being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. So you're still a hero. The simplicity of the logic, delivered with such conviction, made Leo's throat tight. Footsteps in the hallway announced Axel's arrival. The big man filled the doorway, carrying a paper bag that smelled suspiciously like burgers. Hey, kiddo, he said to Toby. Your teacher's waiting. Time to head back to school. But Dad, Leo will still be here tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after that. Axel's eyes met Leo's. He's not going anywhere. Reluctantly, Toby climbed down, but not before giving Leo a careful hug. See you tomorrow, Leo. After he left, Axel set the bag on the tray table and pulled up a chair. Figured you might be hungry. Hospital food is crap. He pulled out a burger, fries, a milkshake. I didn't know what you liked, so I got one of everything. Leo stared at the food like it might bite him. It's okay, Axel said gently. It's for you. No strings. Slowly, Leo reached for the burger. The first bite was heaven. Real food, not dumpster scraps or shelter slop. He didn't realize he was crying until Axel handed him a napkin. I know this is a lot, Axel said. I know you're probably confused and scared. But I meant what I said. You saved Toby. You saved my whole world. And I don't take that lightly. Leo grabbed the whiteboard. I don't understand. What don't you understand? Why you care? I'm nobody. Axel's jaw clenched. Who told you that? Who made you think you were nobody? Leo's hand moved across the board. Everyone. Well, they were wrong. Dead wrong. Axel leaned forward. You know what I see when I look at you? I see a kid who's been through hell and came out the other side still willing to save someone. I see bravery. I see strength. I see someone worth protecting. I can't pay you back. I don't want to be paid back. This isn't a transaction, Leo. This is family. And family doesn't keep score. Leo's hands shook as he wrote. I don't know how to be family. That's okay. Axel's voice was rough with emotion. Neither did I once. But Toby taught me. And we'll figure it out together. Over the next 2 weeks, Leo's room became the heart of the hospital. Brothers came and went, bringing gifts, telling stories, treating Leo like he was precious. Reaper showed up with a custom leather jacket, child-sized, with Ghost embroidered on the back. Chains brought a gaming console. Tank spent hours teaching Leo to play chess using hand signals. Toby visited every day after school, filling the silence with chatter about his classes, his friends, his dreams. He never seemed bothered by Leo's silence, just happy to have someone to talk to. And Axel was always there. He slept in the chair beside Leo's bed. He helped with physical therapy, supporting Leo when his legs wouldn't hold him. He learned to read Leo's expressions, understanding the difference between pain and fear, between discomfort and gratitude. One night, when Leo woke from a nightmare gasping and shaking, Axel was there immediately, his rough hand gentle on Leo's shoulder. It's okay. You're safe. I've got you. Leo grabbed the whiteboard, his writing shaky. I dreamed I was back in the foster home. Axel's expression darkened. That's never happening. You're with me now. With us. What if I'm bad? What if I make you regret this? Impossible. You don't know me. I know enough. I know you're loyal. I know you're brave. I know you've survived things that would break most men. Axel's hand moved to grip Leo's. And I know that whatever's in your past, it doesn't define your future. I can't speak. So, some of the best conversations I've had didn't involve words. Besides, Axel pulled out his phone, showing Leo a text from Toby's teacher. Toby's been teaching his whole class sign language. Says if his brother can't talk, everyone should learn to listen better. His brother. The words hit Leo like a freight train. Brother. Not charity case. Not burden. Brother. I don't deserve this. Kid, if people only got what they deserved, the world would be a much harsher place. You don't have to earn love. You just have to accept it. Leo's shoulders shook. He'd cried more in 2 weeks than in 3 years. All the dammed up emotion finally breaking free. Axel pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of healing injuries. I've got you, Ghost. I've got you, and I'm not letting go. 6 months later, Leo stood in the Grim Reaper's clubhouse, surrounded by 200 bikers. He'd gained 15 pounds of healthy weight. His hair was clean and cut. His scars were healing, though the nightmares still came sometimes. But the biggest change wasn't physical. He was wearing colors, a leather vest that marked him as family, as protected, as belonging. Not a full member. He was still too young, but a ward of the club, which carried just as much weight. Axel stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder, addressing the assembled brothers. Most of you know Ghost's story. How he saved Toby. How he showed us what real courage looks like. Axel's voice carried through the room. Today, we make it official. Leo Foster is a Grim Reaper. He's my son, Toby's brother, and part of this family. Anyone got a problem with that? Silence. Then, as 200 bikers raised their fists in salute, Toby appeared at Leo's other side, grinning ear to ear. Over the past months, the two had become inseparable. Toby the voice Leo didn't have. Leo the protector Toby idolized. Dr. Martinez had warned that Leo might never speak again. The trauma ran too deep. But she'd also said that communication came in many forms, and Leo had found his. He'd learned sign language. He'd learned to express himself through art. Axel's house was covered in Leo's drawings now. He'd learned that family wasn't about blood or words, but about showing up, about protecting, about love. As the party started, music blaring, beer flowing, brothers celebrating, Axel pulled Leo aside. "You okay?" he asked. Leo nodded, then sighed. "More than okay. Home." "Yeah, you are." Axel pulled him into a hug. "You're home, Ghost." Finally, through the window, Leo could see the parking lot full of motorcycles. Could hear laughter and music. Could feel Toby tugging on his vest, wanting to show him something. He thought about the boy he'd been 6 months ago. Invisible, silent, starving. That boy had thrown himself in front of a bullet, not expecting to survive, not expecting reward, just wanting to preserve something beautiful in a cruel world. He'd saved Toby's life. But in doing so, he'd saved his own. Leo looked up at Axel, his father now, in all the ways that mattered, and smiled. For the first time in 3 years, Leo felt like he could breathe. And somewhere in the distance, locked in a hole where he'd spend the rest of his days, Viper screamed into the darkness, knowing he'd face justice for every day of Leo's recovery. But Leo didn't think about Viper. He thought about Toby's laugh, about Axel's steady presence, about the brothers who'd guard him with their lives. He thought about home. And for a boy who'd been invisible for so long, being seen, being loved, was the greatest revenge of all.